Well, I hope you enjoyed October, because Moonvember might start with a meltdown. Bitcoin just had its first red October since 2018, down 3.69%, the third worst October in history. And we saw 400 million in liquidations. The Powell hangover nobody saw coming. And the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, just confirmed that we might be in a recession. Peter Thiel, possibly the Antichrist, well, he says Bitcoin is cooked. Oh yeah, of course he's sitting with Sorkin. Well, we have breaking news. It's not Bitcoin that's cooked, it's the Fed. And the bull market hasn't even begun. That's right.
This week, the Fed voted to lower interest rates another quarter of a point to its lowest level in 3 years. However, the central bank's newest official, Stephen Myron, is warning that if the Fed doesn't continue to lower interest rates rapidly, the U.S. could face a recession. Do you agree that the U.S. is at risk of facing a recession?
I believe that we are in a transition period here, as we are seeing the Trump administration has cut back on government spending, Jake. What has gone unnoticed during the shutdown is for the fiscal year that ends September 30th, the government spent less than it did the year before, and because the GDP grew, the GDP, which had been 6.4, the deficit to GDP, which had been 6.4, 6.5% deficit, the highest when we weren't at war, weren't in a recession ever, we were able to bring it down to 5.9%. So we are bringing down government spending, and I would think that the Fed would want to assist with that, because if we go back and look, MIT just published a study that said 42% of the great inflation of 2022 came from excess government spending. So if we are contracting spending, then I would think inflation would be dropping. If inflation is dropping, then the Fed should be cutting rates.
But do you think that the U.S. is at risk of a recession if the Fed does not continue to drop rates?
I think that we are in good shape, but I think that there are sectors of the economy that are in recession, and the Fed has caused a lot of distributional problems with their policies. I wrote a 7,000-word essay on that. We've seen the biggest hindrance for housing here that are mortgage rates. So, if the Fed brings down mortgage rates, then they can end this housing recession. Low-end consumers who have gotten killed under President Biden, these high rates are hurting them because they have debt, not assets. So I think that there are sections of the economy that could go into recession.
All right.
When the Treasury Secretary admits it, it's kind of official. Scott Bessent says there are sectors of the economy that are in and some that could go into recession. Well, no kidding, because 88% of Americans already live in states that are in economic decline. That has never happened outside of a technical recession, ever. The U.S. housing market, frozen solid. Only 2.8% of homes changed hands this year. That's the lowest in 3 decades. People are locked into 3% mortgages, nobody's selling, buyers can't afford it, and the market's just dead. Banks sitting on $395 billion in unrealized losses. Vehicle repossessions, highest since 2009. The Fed didn't land the plane, they landed a dumpster fire. But while the bureaucrats cry recession, the real game is shifting, because the orange man, Donald Trump, just said something that flipped the entire bearish narratives on their heads. Well, at least when it comes to Bitcoin. Here we go.
I only care about one thing. Will we be number one in crypto? Crypto has turned out, and in that sense, I've been right. Crypto's turned out to be a massive industry, if you want to call it that. And I'm very proud to say that we are far and away ahead of China and everybody else. Now, China's getting into it very big right now. If you want to go after people, you're going to kill that industry, and it'll be very bad. Tremendous number of jobs. I campaigned positively on crypto, very openly. I campaigned. Biden campaigned against it. When Biden found out that I was getting like 100% of the crypto vote, which was a lot, he switched totally, and he went in favor of crypto. They went totally in favor. They had many people under indictment. They let them all go. They let them all go. You know that. Many people were under indictment. Biden was a corrupt president. Biden went all in on crypto at the very end because he thought he could get some votes. It didn't work. They voted for me. I want to make crypto great for America. That's the only thing. I don't want to have somebody else have crypto and have China be number one in the world in crypto. Because in crypto, it's a kind of an industry where basically you're going to have number one and you're not going to have a number two. And right now we're number one by a long shot. I want to keep it that way. The same way we're number one with AI, we're number one with crypto. And I want to keep it that way.
Bitcoin, not crypto. But Trump's not talking means, he's talking monetary power. China's getting big into Bitcoin and Trump just said it out loud. We have to keep America number one. Translation, the world's two biggest economies are racing to accumulate the hardest money ever invented. This isn't just about price, it's national security. Game theory playing out real time. The dollar system just lit a giant red warning light. On Halloween, the Fed's overnight repo facility exploded. $29.4 billion in emergency loans overnight, the biggest spike since the 2020 crisis. And the standing repo facility quietly tapped for a record $50.3 billion. That's roughly an $80 billion cry for help from inside the plumbing of the dollar system. Here's a breakdown of what's going on under the hood in the repo market.
People missed this when the government shutdown started. Right now, what we're seeing happening is basically the government's or the Treasury's Treasury general account, this is their checking account where they pay bills out, has now risen to over $1 trillion. That's unusual. Why is that unusual? Well, think of it this way. When we pay taxes or sales taxes come into the federal government, they go into this TGA account. Well, money then is, checks are written, people are paid, all that, and that money flows out to the system and pays bills. Well, they're not paying bills right now. So that account balance is skyrocketing. It's going higher, over $1 trillion now. It's usually not that high. But what that means is that money is being pulled out of bank accounts and the banking system, creating a tightening or a squeeze on the financial system. This is the underlying plumbing that makes money movement and liquidity move around. So as long as this government shutdown continues, expect banks to be going to the repo window every night and borrowing money. They pledge treasuries or CMOs, collateralized mortgage obligations, in exchange for cash. Well, as this cash liquidity shrinks or the liquidity tightens, expect that it's going to get straining basically the banking system. This is a big deal. This isn't headlines. The stock market isn't going to be driven by headline news. It's driven by liquidity. And this is an example of when liquidity gets interrupted in the overall economy, the U.S. economy or global economy, markets contract. And this is where, going into next week, I'm concerned. As long as this government shutdown continues, as long as 670,000 U.S. government workers don't get a paycheck, and if it were to continue to, December 1st, that's a, $21 billion or so dollar plus amount of money that's not going into the system. That means credit cards aren't being paid. That means mortgages aren't getting paid. That means loans aren't getting paid. Car loans are getting paid. And it always starts in subprime. And we're already seeing that effect. So as long as this government shutdown, along with just the tightening of spending, continues, chances are we're going to see this liquidity squeeze get tighter and tighter. And banks are going to be borrowing more money or pledging more securities, treasuries, CMOs, to the Fed overnight window so they can meet their obligations. At some point, there's a breaking point in everything. And that is my concern as we go into this week and the following weeks, that the equity market, the liquidity in the equity market gets squeezed. And if it gets squeezed more and more, chances are this market is going to come down a substantial amount, maybe just 10 or 15%. But this is something you have to keep an eye on. And that's why you need to check out Best of U.S. Investors. Check out our 14-day free trial where we talk about this stuff. We've been talking about this since the whole shutdown started, and about the liquidity squeeze that is starting to happen. Be an informed and aware investor. CNBC will lead you down a very scary path. So be careful. Whatever you do today, enjoy your day, as I am trying to do, and always, always live loud. Peace.
Exactly. Collateral stress. Banks are starving for liquidity. Every time Repo and SRF light up together, it means one thing. The Fed's quietly bailing out the system. It's stealth QE, and Bitcoin's held above 100K for 176 straight days. ETFs absorbed 3.7x this year's new supply. Exchange reserves still hovering near 7-year lows. The float that fuels panic crashes is gone. You're watching the same liquidity that broke the system now feed the next Bitcoin rally. All right, so here's where it gets biblical. Peter Thiel, billionaire investor, PayPal founder, Palantir overlord, says Bitcoin has no upside left. He claims BlackRock and the state have co-opted Bitcoin, that it's been captured, neutered, and defanged.
Because another investment that you've made and been very public about is Bitcoin. And you have remained a very big bull. You have come out publicly and you said that enemy number one to Bitcoin is the sociopathic grandpa from Omaha that you described as Warren Buffett. Can you tell me what you were thinking when you said that?
It got a lot of laughs, so somehow people, it probably hit some kind of a nerve, but it was it was in a 2022 Bitcoin convention talk I gave, and there were three separate enemies. There was Jamie Dimon, Larry
Fink, who's no longer an enemy, by the way.
Yeah, he sort of shifted, but but anyway, I can say some anti-Larry Fink things too. But and then there was Warren Buffett, and the rough context was my sort of political sociological analysis was the cryptocurrencies it was a revolutionary youth movement, but for them to really take over, you needed. It couldn't just be a student uprising like 1968. You needed to get the rest of the society on board, and as long as the old people were going to sit on their hands, that was the big blocker for cryptocurrencies to go to the next level. And
are you still convinced?
I think it's gotten partially unlocked with the Bitcoin ETF. But then probably the part where I'm less convinced of is this question of the sort of ideological founding vision of Bitcoin or these cryptocurrencies as sort of a cypherpunk, crypto-anarchist, libertarian, anti-centralized government thing. This is always the line.
Isn't that what got you interested in the first place?
That's what I thought was terrific about it. And then the question is, does it really work that way, or has that thread somehow gotten lost? And so when people in the FBI tell me that they'd much rather have criminals use Bitcoin than $100 bills, it suggests that maybe it's not quite working the way it was supposed to.
Have you sold any of your Bitcoin?
I still hold some. There are all these ways I didn't buy as much as I should have, and I'm not sure it's going to go up that dramatically from here.
From here?
Yeah, I think we got the ETF edition, and I don't know who else buys it quickly from here.
Some interesting investment advice. That actually surprised me because I don't think I've heard you. I thought you were still all in.
I still have a small position. It probably still can go up some, but it's going to be a volatile, bumpy ride. And I had a dual reason. One was this sort of ideological, decentralized future of computing world that I really do believe in, really believe would be better. And it seemed like the perfect vehicle for that for such a long time. And I am just much less convinced of that. And so
Interesting.
So maybe Larry Fink with the BlackRock ETF surrendered to the forces, the anti-ESG forces, or maybe it's more like Bitcoin's been co-opted by them, and I worry it was more the latter.
Okay, let's translate that. The man who literally funds the surveillance state is mad that he doesn't control Bitcoin. If the Antichrist is bearish on Bitcoin, that's bullish, baby. Thiel says the FBI loves Bitcoin, that it's not cypherpunk anymore. Well, yeah, it's actually because it won. The revolution doesn't stay underground forever. It becomes the new foundation. ETFs, banks, sovereigns, they're not co-opting Bitcoin, they're bowing to it. The decentralized protocol absorbed Wall Street, not the other way around. And that, my friends, is how freedom wins. And while Thiel's crying about decentralization being dead, Wall Street veteran Jordy Visser just explained what's really happening with Bitcoin's price.
What's your read on Bitcoin, and are you giving up? Are you walking away?
No, so a couple things.
Just freeze frame Jordy's reaction right there.
Number one, every possible thing to everyone listening that you would want for Bitcoin is happening right now, meaning the government is supporting things. The financial guardrails are shifting. We've got news after news every single day about the financial guardrails becoming more digital economy. It's things that are necessary for the network effects to kick in. All of that has happened. We still see inflows from retail. We still see the banks now opening it up for people to go through. But there's clearly a bunch of whatever it is, OGs, Bitcoin miners out of China, whoever it is, large amounts. Mike Novogratz publicly said it. If you go back to July, there have been billions and billions of dollars of, let's say, original investors supporting Bitcoin, regardless of how you want to term it. So I'm writing a Substack. I think what people should think about is we don't have an IPO for Bitcoin, but this last 4 months to me feels like sourcing the pricing of the IPO, where the original investors are getting out of large chunks. Now, why is there ever an IPO? For monetization. If someone has 9 billion in Bitcoin, I mean, I think they should diversify a little bit. If it was related to China, guess what China has now that they haven't had since 2014, 15? A bull market in stocks. Guess what else people have? Well, they have the chance to invest in AI. AI is a 10-bagger in many cases. You've been able to do it in the public markets. So I think at some point, Bitcoin becomes a boring asset to people who are looking for 3-baggers, 4-baggers, 5-baggers. It becomes a diversification. So I think this is just a distribution of a few massive holders. And the weaknesses I have heard about Bitcoin as I've gotten into it from institutions, it's too volatile. Not too volatile anymore. We've taken the implied volatility and the actual realized volatility down to 30 and below in some cases. So the vols come down. Okay, what's the next thing? Well, it's too concentrated in ownership. I mean, I've gone through the numbers. When you add Satoshi's wallet, you add the other whales, you're talking about a third of it has been owned by not many people. I think like 10,000 is the number I heard. Regardless of what the right answer is, every month the Bitcoin IBIT outstanding shares goes up. It's up again this month, even though the price is down. So I think everyone that's depressed has actually become entitled. I think they think it's a risk asset. Oh, there's another one. This is just a risk asset. Okay, well, it's not going up with the NASDAQ, so that's good. Lower correlation. Well, it's just digital gold. Well, it's not going up with gold. So guess what? In portfolio theory, for everyone who hasn't bought any yet, I think with your stocks, with your gold, with your bonds, now there's every argument to make. It's lower volatility now, lower correlation with the other traditional asset class, diversification from gold. I think this thing is going to move higher. I was wrong about where I thought we'd be at this point. It's still up for the year. I think once this consolidation is done and we're through the IPO process and the fundamentals take over, next year, once we get through clarity and the beginning of tokenization and the stories of Zelle and everything along those lines, I think we're going to have an acceleration.
Bingo! Bitcoin's not broken, it's maturing. OGs are cashing out. Institutions are quietly buying. It's a silent IPO. Remember when Galaxy Digital sold 9 billion of Bitcoin for one client and Bitcoin didn't even drop 5%? That's not weakness. That's unreal strength. The market absorbed billions in sell pressure without breaking 100K. That's the tell. We're not in a distribution. We're in a transition. Bitcoin's moving from the pirates to the pensions, from chaos to collateral. And while the shift unfolds, the Fed's losing control of its own narrative. Things are about to get insanely bullish. It's time to bring it home. But before we do, Look at our likes!
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Let's take a quick second for our sponsors who keep this show on the air over at the Bitcoin Way. If your wealth lives in their system, it's not yours, it's theirs. That's why we scream Bitcoin. That's why you self-custody. And that's why you call our friends over at the Bitcoin Way. They'll walk you through multi-sig, self-custody, privacy, how to run a node, and the tools that keep you sovereign when the fiat system pulls the plug. Don't wait till it's too late. Book a free 30-minute consult today using that link in the show notes. Need cash but don't want to sell your Bitcoin? Ledn is the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans, issuing over $9 billion in loans since 2018, and they were the first to offer proof of reserves. With Ledn, you get custody loans, no credit checks, no monthly payments, and more. Visit learn.ledn.io/simply to learn more and get 25 basis points off your first loan. The Fed just quietly admitted what we've been saying for years. There's no way out. They ended quantitative tightening. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. Bernanke once said that QE was temporary. 14 years later, that temporary emergency policy became the permanent operating system of the global economy. The Fed's trapped. Raise rates? They blow up their balance sheet. Cut rates? Inflation explodes. They are the market now. They can't sell the trillions in mortgage-backed garbage without detonating housing. The central bank that once said it could normalize now can't even afford to tell the truth. There is no exit ramp left, just printing. And when the system is addicted to liquidity, there's only one sober asset left, Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin doesn't need Jerome Powell's permission to function. It just keeps running. 17 years later, Bitcoin never shuts down. Even Besant gets it.
I think the next big step would be if a government that has the ability to print and debase and uses a central bank to manipulate and control and influence the time, energy, effort, and labor of the populace and of society, if a government that has that power is able to buy Bitcoin and acknowledge it, not even the legal tender part, just acknowledge it, own it, and validate it, that would be a huge deal. And I actually think the United States of America is probably in the best position to do that, and where I think they're the most likely candidate because they have the world reserve currency. Like the US is like, we're broke, like we just issued debt, like we're, you know, being the world reserve currency implies that we run these massive deficits and we issue all of this debt, right? And so we are the most incentivized to actually start backing our future promises with something real. So I told, you know, my chief of staff is somewhere in the audience. I told him, like, after El Salvador, people would ask me, you know, what's the next? Is it, you know, Guatemala, Argentina? Everyone was like looking on a map, looking through Latin America. I said, you know, it might be the United States. Bitcoin's very American. And the United States, in theory, is technology, innovation, inclusion, equality. Every node on the network is treated equal. You can come and go as you please. So maybe I'm manifesting a little bit. Maybe this is less of a prediction, more of a hope. But I think that would be a really big deal. And as big of a deal as El Salvador was, the next step would be a government that actually can print their money and debase the populace through money printing. If they were to say this Bitcoin thing's legit and we should have some, I think that'd be massive.
Jack Mallers nails it. The US will print to buy Bitcoin. Kind of because they have to. Because when you can't fix the debt, you inflate it away and pivot to the hardest collateral on earth. The Fed's cooked, the banks are bleeding, and the Antichrist, well, he's bearish on freedom. And that is perfectly fine with us.
I think Bitcoin's going to rip the face off this market. I think Bitcoin's going to 200,000 to 1 million. Between that, which people are always like, that's such a wide range, you dick. Well, you're asking me to price something in a piece of paper that these guys print all the time. It's less of how high do I think Bitcoin's going to go. It's how much are these guys going to print? I don't fucking know. They're going to stimulate 10 trillion, 5 trillion, 15 trillion. You know, if they do 4 times as much as they did in COVID, yeah, it could go to a million.
Right.
If they do the same as COVID, yeah, it goes to 400K. If they do half of COVID, 250K. So somewhere in that range. But I think Bitcoin shows you how fucked this thing really is. It's what Bitcoin does every time. Is it's like, oh, the S&P was up 49%. Gold did well. Gold was up 8%. what's that thing? Whoa, 160%. And that's the free market being like, your system's piece of trash. You can't control this thing. So we're going to tell you exactly how fucked your system is. So I think the system's really fucked. And the best way to monetize that is to own Bitcoin. But the best way to express it, I think it puts up a big fuck you number over the next 2 years.
That's it. The game is over. They just don't know it yet. Bitcoin isn't some speculative trade anymore. It's the global reserve asset being priced into history. What did Giga Chad say? Oh yeah, he said, winter's canceled. It's going to 1 million.
How do you expect the asset to continue a price increase at these levels that we've seen? I mean, can it keep that up over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years? And at what point do we see, winter coming again? Because that's been a permanent fixture of this asset class, right? It's gone from 0 or 1,000 to 20, and then back down to 3 or 4, and then up to 50, and then back down to 15, and now up to 110. Like, when does it drop again?
Winter's not coming back. We're past that. We're past that phase. If Bitcoin's not going to 0, it's going to $1 million. And you have all the evidence you need to determine that, right? The President of the United States has determined he supports Bitcoin. The cabinet supports Bitcoin. Scott Bessent supports Bitcoin. Paul Atkins has shown himself to be an enthusiastic believer of Bitcoin and digital assets. Ken Tez at CFTC feels the same way. The banks are going to custody Bitcoin. Bitcoin has gotten through its riskiest period. The accounting has been corrected. There's now only 450 Bitcoin a day available for sale by natural sellers. That's the miners. At this level, that works out to about $50 million of Bitcoin available for sale every day. If that $50 million is bought, then the price has got to move up to find any seller that's price sensitive. Now, if you do the math, you'll actually see the Bitcoin treasury companies by themselves are buying the entire natural supply.
Yeah. BlackRock
and the ETFs are buying another measure of that. And we've got nation state actors coming into the space. So I think when Bitcoin rallies, if it surges to 500,000 or $1 million, then maybe we could talk about it crashing down by $200,000 a coin. But at the current price levels, it only takes $50 million to turn the entire drive shaft of the crypto economy one turn. And you've got the Trump media organization announcing $2.5 billion. You've got GameStop announcing $500 million. You've got my company that's raising billions and billions of dollars. So the writing is on the wall. Bitcoin's moving higher.
Arthur Hayes says 70% crashes are dead. And Trump, he's watching China stack sats and saying we have to keep America #1. The fourth turning is here. The Fed can't unwind. The dollar can't hide. And Bitcoin never dies. Stack sats, stay humble. Moonvember has begun. Maybe batten down the hatches. And send it, baby! Oh, and yeah, we're just days away from Mining Disrupt 2025. Get those tickets to Mining Disrupt 2025. See the future of Bitcoin mining up close in Dallas, Texas, November 11th through the 13th. The biggest names in the industry. Cutting edge rigs, Bitcoin, and AI integration, the signal you won't get anywhere else. Grab your tickets today and use promo code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off, and we'll see you there. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Smash the like, subscribe, and give us a pamp by sharing the Sound Money Gospel. Set those notifications for the best in Bitcoin news delivered to you daily, and I love you guys. Catch you next time.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.